Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Welcome to another episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast. My name is Kevin Sackreiter. I serve as the Executive Director for the Center for Professional Enrichment and Teaching Excellence here at South Dakota State University. And we're really excited to be kicking off our new series focused on the Student Success Network here at South Dakota State University. And to help us kick that series off, we are joined today by Tina Birgen, who is the Coordinator for Student Success and Opportunity, who serves as the liaison for the Student Success Network within the Wintrode Student Success and Opportunity Center here at South Dakota State University. Welcome to the podcast, Tina.
Thank you, Kevin. That was a long title. You did a great job.
I have practiced on that title a little bit. I will not lie. I think as we get started, why don't we just give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience today and tell us a little bit about Tina Birgen.
Okay, my name is, like I said, is Tina, and I've been the coordinator for Student Success and Opportunity for about the last 2.5 years. I come from a teaching and coaching background, so I'm excited to be a part of this program that's thriving, and it's really, truly a team approach, which takes me back to some of the things I used to do before coming here.
Right. Well, and I think the word impactful is one that I always think of when it comes to the Student Success Network. And so let's just jump right in and give you a chance to talk about that a little bit. And so maybe if you'd be willing to share about the role that the Student Success Network has in supporting students here at South Dakota State University. And I'm going to give you the ball and let you run with it, but just to think about, what does that Student Success Network do? Who does it support? And maybe what's some of the specific services or offices that are involved with that Student Success Network?
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start with who is in the Student Success Network in itself. And we have 15 core partners that are a part of that. We have the Wintrode Student Success and Opportunity Center, which encompasses the first year advising, the academic success and recovery, and the TRIO programs. We have the American Indian Student Center. We have Veterans Affairs, Professional Academic Advisors, the Student Athlete Advising and Support, Continuing and Distance Education, the Graduate School, Honors, Housing and Residential Life, New Student Orientation, the Graduate School, the Office of Multicultural Affairs and Accessibility, and the Office of International Affairs. So it's a long list of people, but truly our goal is really to holistically support students. That's our objective, and really do it through a coordinated team approach. We identify our students' needs and then try at our very best to measure our ability to meet those needs, develop workshops. That would be something that we look at to help support students off of the information we've received, student engagement opportunities or educational events that we have going on, create supplemental resources and connections to our partner offices, and then enhance our communication efforts between us, and kind of knocking down those silos and bringing us together as a team to find out what each other are doing and how can we best support students.
Right. So if it doesn't put you on the spot too much, you had a long list of different offices, right? So how did those offices come together? Like maybe a little insight into that decision-making thought process as those offices came together. What did that look like? And why are those the ones that we have as part of the Student Success Network?
That's a great question. Prior to me arriving at SDSU, the Board of Regents and SDSU administrators got together, and they are the ones who decided who the core campus partners were. So that was set, like I said, back in 2022. And then since there, of course, we do work with several supporting offices on campus that are part of our umbrella. There's supporting offices that we have, but those 15 core areas were advised by them.
So I know there's a model out there that's got some circles going on within it.
That's true.
Is there anything related to that model that we maybe want to make sure we talk about as far as like those are those core offices, but I feel like it branches out to help build that network to connect students. Am I saying that right? You probably have a much better way of describing that model.
Yes. So the 15 core offices are the ones that are getting together on a monthly basis. We're working together between one another. But then the additional supporting offices are anything from the counseling office to, several different places on campus that we work with that we can bring together. So it's not just one, the Miller Wellness Center, those that are not in that circle, they are still our supporting partners, but we're just not technically meeting on a regular one-on-one basis. I know that we will do coordinated efforts with each other to try to support, but right now those are the core identified offices.
So as you were kind of talking about the different offices and even kind of the more external parts of that model, I heard you mention the word connections and engagement. Those themes keep coming up. And so how exactly does the Student Success Network, and maybe you as the liaison for that network, how does that network work to connect students and engage students within the SDSU community?
Yes. So ultimately, by our engagement opportunities would be something that we have, but communication efforts. So we have to communicate with one another and then provide those opportunities. And if we're not sharing with each other what we're doing, then we don't know what each other are trying to move forward in the circle of things. So I would say just working together with one another and providing that opportunity where students can hear the information. And it could be something as simple as communicating it through the Rabbit Report. It could be information that we're sharing like this on a podcast, which is wonderful. But we do targeted efforts to connect with students and provide them workshops as well, like I said earlier. So I think it's just letting them know that we're here to be a support system for them. But if we don't know what each other need, then it's really easy to focus on just the things that we have within our internal office and pigeonhole on those activities versus broadening our horizon to make it a little more supportive and holistic.
Right. Well, and I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If I'm a student and I come in to meet with my advisor, or I come into Wintrode or in the veterans office and I have a concern, I assume that there's kind of a referral or a connection process between the offices within the Student Success Network to direct the students to the appropriate resource.
Well, I think us meeting on a regular basis gives us a better idea of what each other are doing. So if I were a student that showed up in the Veterans Affairs office and I'm talking with Connie or Russ and whomever it may be over there, and I'm needing maybe assistance with tutoring or supplemental instruction, of course they know that they will refer them directly to the Wintrode Center, and that would be something that we would support them with. But we also would have conversations, like I said, with the counseling department where we would have known more holistically what's going on, and maybe we could make a referral to that space if we knew that student maybe need a little bit more emotional support. So I think it just comes down to really holistically supporting them and finding out who would be the best resource. Is it something with housing and residential life that I need to get them connected with their hall director or their CA, or is there somebody else that we know through, again, the things that are supporting our students? Or if I have a student that maybe came in my office and who's looking for different engagement opportunities to be a part of a club, we know that some of our offices have specific clubs that are assigned to them, so we could direct them that direction. So yes, I think the more awareness that we have of each other's programs, the better we can support students.
I love that awareness word. I think that really hones in on it really well. And so one of the questions we like to ask within this podcast, specifically as we start this series, and we'll be asking that of all of the different offices that you've mentioned today, is what types of frustrations do you recognize that our students maybe bring that the Student Success Network is able to support them and help them in navigating those challenges? Like, I guess maybe another way of asking is, what are some of the real strengths of the Student Success Network in addressing student frustrations that may pop up on a daily or weekly basis?
Right. We actually did conversation moments back in 2022 where we collected students from our Student Success Network to try to get a better idea of what their frustrations were. Where are our successes? Where are our weaknesses? Where are there areas that we can improve to help support students best? And some of the ones that were brought up from that conversation have been targeted efforts that we've done over the last couple of years. One of them was academic performance. And so the way we've addressed some of that is, first of all, just having that awareness of available support services that we do have, anything from our NSO informational sessions to pre-arrival seminars. Of course, normalizing tutoring and SI. Students that come to campus sometimes don't recognize that tutoring and SI is something that is there to support you, but it's not necessarily that you have to have it, but maybe it's somebody that's a B student that wants to be an A student. Sure. It could be the D student trying to be the C student. So normalizing that it's okay to get assistance with that, providing referrals and tutorials and so forth, like we talked about earlier, to maybe an office, or maybe it's a study hub resource that you can go on our Wintrode site that we have for supplemental additional resources. We have the early alert program, and again, that's for a lot of 100 and 200 level courses there to support students, and it's that faculty-student connection, but with that, it also gets connected with our advisors. Right. So that opens up some of that. Sense of belonging was another thing that students were striving to get more opportunities for. So I think just providing those spaces where they know that they can maybe go study. When are they most feeling safe and secure in their environments, and what spaces do we have available on campus? So I think having that. Of course, we have living communities, so that's or living learning communities, and Meet State were great opportunities where students can connect a little bit more. Offering hybrid options, and making our online students also aware and feeling a part of our community versus just the in-person options.
I'm just curious, since you mentioned hybrid options, what specifically would that look like if I were an online student?
So if I were an online student and I offered maybe a workshop, that workshop, instead of it just being in person, is going to be available to them as well. So maybe it's going to be a student that's here on our campus, but then we've also connected with them as well.
I think it's very similar to the work we try to do with our faculty who are off campus, right? Having that multiple delivery options on things. Sure.
And then mental health support was one of the areas that students were seeking a little more advice and assistance in. So that one-on-one advising, and as I shared earlier, several of our partners are advisors, and that's that one-on-one holistic support and being aware of how to provide an environment that feels welcoming and safe and secure, and that a student does feel like they can share their personal stressors of whatever it is that they have going on to find that support. Housing and Residential Life offers, of course, 24-hour triaging with on-call rotations, so I think that's a great way of supporting them. Training opportunities, like I said, some special events with Veterans Affairs like Horses for Heroes, targeted support with the Honors College did one last year, I believe. That was called the Wellness Check-ins for Honors 100 class. And so that was a way that when students showed up, they would just do a quick scan 1 through 5 to find out where they're at today. So I think that was another great strategy to try to connect with students a little more. Financial support, of course, we'd love to all say that college is paid for. College is not always paid for. And when they're here, of course, there's a lot of additional stressors that come with that. So providing those one-on-one meetings and opportunities and some resources and tips that we can do to help them when they do go off on their own someday and have to pay those bills back if they come.
You've kind of hit on this a little bit, but maybe I'll dig a little bit deeper. Being a podcast connected and sponsored by the SDSU Wellbeing Team, one of the things we like to talk a lot about is the supports that might exist, or the ways that different offices or initiatives connect students to support services related to mental, physical, and emotional well-being. And you've talked a little bit about that, but I'm curious how that network works together with the Wellness Center and the Counseling Center to make sure that we are able to provide the support services related to well-being that students may need.
Right. So if a student were to come into one of our offices and share a mental well-being concern that they have with whether it's a staff member, an advisor, or whomever it may be, we do have ways that we directly connect them through a referral program. So that would be one way. But I think having that open dialogue, like I said, between the counseling department and us would be the first way. I know there's been times I've had students in my office where I'll just pick up the phone and call. Sure. And and just say, is this an opportunity where I can connect this student with someone? And sometimes I've walked over with students who need that direct support. So I think just letting students know that each and every one of them is their own person, and it's okay if life isn't going straight from A to B, right. And that sometimes we have curves along the way, and that's just part of life. Sometimes it's by choices, and sometimes it's by just what life has handed you at that time. So
I really appreciate the way that you say that. I think that's really impactful. And and so we talk about the Student Success Network a lot, because I think the word students involved right at the beginning. We really focus on the impact that the Student Success Network has on our students. But I kind of like to ask a little bit broader question, and that relates to kind of the SDSU community as a whole, whether that's faculty, staff, members of the Brookings community. What are some ways that you would encourage that community, the SDSU community, to engage and support students or the Student Success Network here at South Dakota State?
So I would say, one, being aware of what each other do, I think, is a great support system. But for students themselves, I would say that they are knowing and understanding that they're welcome to stop in anytime. I think visiting places tears down barriers, and I think it just automatically opens up conversation opportunities where you can learn to understand what's going on more in their lives. Sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's that stopping in person or an email, whatever your mode is that works for you best, to know that you have people here on this campus and in our community who are here to support you and help you be successful. So I think it's just having the courage to step out and say, I'm going to ask for help, or just ask the question because you need assistance to connection with a resource. I know there's been students that stop in and even talk, and I'm going to give my example, but they'll stop in and they'll maybe say they need a connection to our community. And I can get them connected to somebody with the Chamber of Commerce or whoever it may be that's there to help support our students. But I think it's really just advocating for yourself as a student and knowing that you have resources and supports here who care about you, and not to fall deep into a hole where your pride maybe gets in the way of asking for help, but just know that you have that supportive system here for you.
I love that. And so I'll frame it a little bit focused on faculty, but I think faculty and staff as well. You mentioned being aware of the Student Success Network. What would be your kind of takeaway message for a faculty member? As what specifically about the Student Success Network do you think is really vital that they be aware of in order to help support their students in their classes that they're maybe advising, that they're doing research with? Is there one or two pieces that you're like, this is what I really think a faculty or staff member needs to be aware of in order to better support those students?
I think for a faculty member or a staff member, one, to understand who we are and who makes up the Student Success Network. Two, I think to take advantage of maybe going to our website and looking into that. So if you go into the Wintrode Student Success and Opportunity Center, you will see a list of these core partners. So as you're working with a student who maybe shares something personal with you that has a connection to the Veterans Office, if they tell you and they share with you, hey, I have a connection with the Veterans Affairs Office, are they connected with our office? That would be the first thing I would know. And so knowing that we have several partners that are here to support them, but if you don't know who they are, then you don't know how to provide that connection. So I think awareness is probably their number one goal. And then second, to continue to support them by teaching the students to advocate for what they need. Because we know that as a faculty and staff member, you're hearing the brunt of what's going on, especially faculty. You're hearing what's really going on. But I think as our network continues to grow, just to keep seeking and finding and learning and growing from what we're doing to provide that with our students.
So we're nearing the end of our time, but I think you gave me a really nice transition. So I'm going to give you a question that I didn't prepare you or let you know I maybe was going to think about asking. And you mentioned as the Student Success Network continues to grow. And so as we kind of wrap up, what does the future of the Student Success Network look like here at South Dakota State University?
Well, I don't know if that's definitive at this point. Like I said, the core partners were decided before I got here. Sure. So right now, that's what we have, and that's where we're at, and that's where we're growing. I don't think we've hit all of our goals yet, so I think we still have goals that we have to address. But then I think that would be up to the SDSU community, really, more than me, more than our liaisons within each department. I think it would have to be a goal that the SDSU community would identify if we needed to expand it further or stay with the focus of where we are right now. And then, of course, our students. We'll continue to investigate with them and ask them, what are you looking for? How can we best support you so we can be the best premier place that there is to offer in this area?
That's a great answer. I love that. So as we wrap up, I'd like to give our guests an opportunity to tell us basically, if I'm a student and I need to connect with the Student Success Network or I need to connect with Tina, what's the best way to do that?
You can stop by Wagner 251 anytime. That is where my office is located. But I think with any of our partners, if a student went on Connect State, oftentimes they can find a connection point right there because it will get you an ability to set up an appointment with those offices in there. So that's a gift in itself. It'll compare their schedule with your schedule. So that's one way. All of us, and anybody really on this campus, have an open door policy. We want students to know that you are more than welcome. I would encourage you to go to events. If there are events coming on and you see something advertised, get out there, meet people, talk to people so you can find that connection resource on campus. And then, of course, you can phone, email, whatever it may be. But yes.
Well, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Wintrode Student Success and Opportunity Center, Tracy has a giant bowl of candy typically waiting right at the front desk. So if you need an incentive.
Yes, she does. And Tracy will smile and welcome you with open arms.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Tina, for joining us today and being a part of our first episode in our Student Success Network themed series of conversations, talking about the different offices and services within that network. Our goal is to talk to all of those offices, or the majority of those offices, I should say, that Tina mentioned earlier in the podcast. And so Tina Birgen, coordinator for Student Success and Opportunity, who serves as the liaison for the Student Success Network within the Wintrode Student Success and Opportunity Center. Thank you for being our guest today and being a part of this conversation. And thank you all who are tuning in and listening to the State of Wellbeing podcast here at South Dakota State University.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.